Thank you for having me, and I hope you guys are doing well. Thanks for joining on Sunday. That too during IPL, so I understand it can be difficult. Uh, Let me get started. Quick introduction. I work as a senior developer advocate with DigitalOcean. In my previous avatar, I worked as a developer where I created platforms based on cloud native technologies and also helped customers migrate their workload from legacy infrastructure to cloud-based infrastructure. Uh, I'm an active contributor to Kubernetes SIG contributs. You can find me on Kubernetes Slack. My handle there is Penso91. You can also find me on Twitter with the same handle. Or if you are kind of person who would rather, write down an email, please feel free to send one at pgupta@digitalocean.com. Right. So let's get started. Right. And what is Hacktoberfest? Right. And I'm sure most of you, I saw the responses in the chat. Most of you have already registered. Most of you know Hacktoberfest is a month-long celebration of open source software, and it is primarily organized by DigitalOcean. This year, we are partnering with two more companies. Those are Intel and Dell. And if the name sounds too cryptic, when we say month-long, we basically mean it happens in October. Before going into Hacktoberfest details, I will just talk a bit about open source as well. Like since the whole project, the whole program is focused on open source. Right? And open source is also known as FOSS. That's free and open source software. Some people also call it FLOSS. There is virtually no difference. It's just the meaning of the word, how they make sense. Right? That's the only difference. In the end of the day, bottom line, they are both saying the same thing. Right? Now, when you say FOSS, it's basically free and open source. Right? And there are two parts to this. Right? One part is being free and one part is being open source. Right? So let's talk about these. So when you say open source, right, the the basic meaning behind open source is whenever you are developing a product, whenever you're creating a software, you also rather than just providing the product or rather than just providing the resulting binary, you also provide the source code of that product. Right, that's what it is all about. Now, if you contrast it with the earlier software development practices, let's say Microsoft Windows, right? Uh, when you used to buy Windows, right? When I'm not sure how many of you remember, Windows used to come in CDs, right? And those CDs used to have that image burn, right? So you just use that CD and install Windows, right? You don't know what is the code that is being used to written that particular binary, right? What is powering that code, right? Are there any security vulnerabilities or anything? Nobody knew. Only the people who are actually developing that code, only those people used to know, right? So the free and the open source software is basically an opposite of that, right? Here, when you get a product, you also get the source code with that, and you exactly know what piece of code is powering which particular functionality, right? Now the second part of that phrase, it's free, right? And that's pretty controversial, right? How do you define free, right? And that's why one of the best example that we use is it's free as in free speech or as in free beer, right? And there's a difference, right? When you say free speech, it doesn't cost you anything, right? When you tell somebody that okay, you have freedom of speech, you don't pay anything for it. But when you give somebody a free beer, like you pay something for that, right? So the only difference is the price part. So when we say you have a free and open source software, that means it's a philosophical freedom, right? It's not a pricey freedom, right? We are not going to pay you to use that product, but you have that product and you have the freedom to use it as you see fine, right? No, I'm not sure how many of you are actually allowed to drink beer, so take that example with a caution. And for a longer period of time, when we started creating software, when we started creating these new tools, right? For a very long time, all of this was closed source, right? All of this was a black box where nobody knew, how do you access these things, and what is the code and who is creating it and all those things. And companies went to, you know, good lengths just to hide their codes, right? They created laws around it, and there were patents, intellectual properties, and all those things, right? And that all changed in 1983 when the legend of free and open source software, Mr. Richard Stallman, he created the GNU project with the GPL license, right? And he just came in and he open sourced all the things. He gave out all the code, and that basically changed the way we develop software today. Right? He also established Free Software Foundation in 1985 that set up guidelines on how you can create an open source software, among other things, right? And then, of course, Linus Torvalds created Git, and the rest is history, right? Now, Git hosts the biggest amount of code, right, with millions of repositories, right? So, and it's not about when you say free, I mean, we are not putting any restrictions, right? Just understand, free, as I said, right? It's not freedom is not in sense of that you are free to do anything with it, right? You can still put some restriction, but in the end of the day, it has to be open source. And the way you put those restriction in is via licenses. Like so, the original license was GPL, that was General Public License from GNU. I guess they are at version 3 now, right? And there are other licenses that have come up like MIT and Apache and all those things, DST. Right? The way these licenses put a restriction in on how you can actually resell these particular products, right? Let's say if you write your code and if you open source it, and you can basically use a license that allows people to use your product for free, but it doesn't allow them to resell it. Right? Or you can do that, okay, you can resell it, but you cannot modify it, right? Or basically you can say you can modify it, but you will have to mandatorily push back those changes, right? So there are a lot of permutations and combinations there, but in the end of the day, the philosophy behind free and open source software remains that you don't pay for it. Second, you get the product with the source code, right? Now, now you might think that, okay, I created this software, I created this tool, I wrote the code, I did the designing, I did all the research and market management and everything, right? Why should I give it away for free? What's in it for me, right? This sounds pretty counterintuitive to what I'm trying to do, right? In the end of the day, you're working for it, and you should be able to, you should not give it away for free, right? And that makes sense, right? But there are advantages or there are benefits of using open source softwares, right? And one of the biggest advantages, it basically creates lower software costs for the community, right? When you create a level playing field, right, for everybody, right? When the source is or when the code is out in the open for everybody to use, it creates it encourages better quality, right? When your code is out there, and let's a pretty amazing way, and I'm trying to solve a pretty efficient way, and I'm trying to solve some other problem where I'm stuck with a problem similar to you, I can actually take help from that solution, and I can incorporate that in my product, and I can make it better, right? And that way, the classic example is Linux, right? When you talk about Windows versus Linux, right? The kernel is open source. Anybody can go and create an operating system on top of that. And we have a lot of examples. We have got Canonical, Red Hat, Fedora, Debian, everybody creating their own flavors, right? And they actually help customer because they are planning to solve one specific part of the problem, right? And they don't charge you. There is no vendor lock-in. Of course, you can use whatever you want to use, right? In the end of the day, kernel remains the same, right? Your system calls remain the same. You can put up as many wrappers on top of it as you want. But if somebody wants to switch from Debian to Ubuntu, it doesn't take much to do that. Right? And one of the biggest statement that's given in favor of open source is if you given enough eyeballs, all bugs are shelved, right? And that was a problem when the code started and when open source revolution started. People were like that your code is out in the open, right? Anybody can go and change it, and anybody can exploit those vulnerabilities, right? But what they failed to understand was, yes, there are bad actors in the world, but there are good actors as well, and the number of good actors actually outweighs the number of bad actors, right? So when you open source the code, you allow it to be scrutinized by thousands of developers all across the globe, right? And when your code gets through such a scrutiny, right, there is no way it would have that many bugs coming up, right? So Initially it feels like that, okay, people can take advantage of it, but the end results actually becomes the opposite of that, right? You get a code that is constantly improving, constantly getting added by new features, constantly getting new security fixes, right? And it eventually becomes better, right? Rather than you doing it in a closed source environment. Like, it allows you for customization flexibilities, right? Because when you are developing open source tools, right, you have lot of ideas coming in, right? And there are hundreds of people contributing to that code, and they come from different backgrounds, they come from different thought processes, right? And they want to keep it flexible, right? They don't want to make it rigid, right? It's not like that, you know uh, it's just not like tightly bind things like Apple does nowadays, right? It's more of a shift and lift kind of a thing, where you can constantly add new features, you can constantly add new customizations, and something that you can make use of yourself for. Like, it obviously reduces license management, right? You're not paying for it. You just need to make sure of, you don't need to go into the intellectual property issues and patenting and all those things, right? You can just put up a simple license file, and you can just start sharing your code. Right? And it also allows for a transparent audit, right? When your code is out in the world, uh, anybody can take a look at it and find out what are the issues there, right? Meanwhile, if you contrast it with a closed source or a proprietary system, uh, it usually takes, sometimes there have been cases where a closed source tool was running in production for decades, and it had a vulnerability, right? We hear a lot of news about backdoors and all those things, right? They come up because that code is not out in the open, right? You don't know what's going inside. If somebody is able to access it, then they get to know that, okay, this was also possible. But when a code is out in open source, uh, those things become pretty apparent. Somebody or the other, one or the other developer will actually point it out that you have got a security hole here, right? And one of the biggest argument that people give against open source is about, how do you make money out of it, right? And the example or the answer to that is Red Hat, right? Red Hat has their whole stack based on open source, right? They don't charge you for the tool itself, but they charge you for services, right? And that's how you make money in an open source software. You don't actually sell the product, but you sell your skills, you sell your services, right? It's not. I mean, don't think in that way that you can't make money from open source, or you can't make a career out of open source. There are thousands and thousands of examples where people have actually done that. Right. So that was mostly about open source. Let's get back to Hacktoberfest. And I would just like to give you some history about how Hacktoberfest has grown, how it started. Right. We started the program in 6 years back, and that time we had only 670 signups, right? And only 500 people actually completed, right? And now if you compare it with the number of signups we had last year, that was more than 130,000, and almost 60,000 people completed the challenge, right? And we had what, 480,000 pull requests completed last year, right? Now think about it, right? In 1 month, we were able to elevate open source to a level where there were more than 480,000 PRs coming in, right? And again, those are not invalid PRs, right? We are not counting the invalid and spam PRs here, right? These are the meaningful contributions that maintainers accepted and merged, and basically they didn't tag them as spam or invalid, right? So that's the kind of platform Hacktoberfest has evolved into, right? When we started, we had in 2014, the rule was you have to make 50 commits, right? It was not about how many PRs you open, how many get merged. Your one PR can have 40 commits in it, right? Doesn't matter. But in the end of the day, there has to be 50 commits, right? And once we did that, we realized the potential of the program, right? And doing 50 commits in a month for an open source veteran or a person who knows, who knows open source, pretty widely, it's easier for them. But it's pretty difficult for people who have just started using open source, right? 50 commits is a big deal, right? So we changed the program, like we added some, we basically relaxed the rules. We started counting the number of PRs. I guess what started with 5, then it became 6, and then it came back to 4, right? And basically that was the last year's thing, right? We had 4 PRs to any GitHub public repository, right? And that's how it's been evolving, right? It's just 6-year-old program, right? We are also trying to understand how we can change it, how we can add new things to it. And it's not just about the PRs, it's not just about the signups or the completions, right? Open source is about community, right? And so is Hacktoberfest. We want to create a platform where community can come together, right? They can contribute, they can collaborate with each other, right? And that's what Hacktoberfest urges you to do, right? If you look at the diagram, right? So starting from 2015, 2016, right? I don't have a picture for 2014, right? Probably, I mean, with 500 people, we didn't have really much of a community, but we have seen events where people from different backgrounds with different skill sets, people who have never have sent any PR, right? They have come together, they have learned from other developers, other contributors, and they have started their Hacktoberfest journey, and probably they are today some project maintainers, in some of the projects, right? So Hacktoberfest has provided a platform where, where at events like these, communities have come together and they have created awesome stuff. So let's talk about this year's Hacktoberfest. It's an October-long celebration of open source software, and here individuals learn, contribute, meet other developers, and contribute 4 pull requests to earn a limited edition T-shirt. Right now, I know you might be thinking the key part of that sentence is getting a T-shirt, right? But trust me, it's not. The key part of that sentence is basically learn, contribute, and meet other developers, right? You learn something, you try, when you contribute to an open source project, right? You understand how that project is written, right? And everybody has their own, own style of writing code, their own security constraints, right? Their own way of defining things, right? You get to learn about that, right? You get to contribute, right? And contribution is always good, right? And you also meet developers from across the globe, right? Probably you wouldn't meet them, if it was not for Hacktoberfest, right? I mean, you wouldn't just go and start sending, start talking to random developers across the globe, right? But Hacktoberfest gives you that platform, right? So always keep that in mind, right? It's not just about the T-shirt; it's about learning, contributing, and meeting developers, right? And this year we have support for all virtual events. Given the state we are in, right? Given the time we are living in, right? Physical events are not a possibility this year, right? And we didn't want that to impact the community and the collaboration, right? So we have that's why we partnered with MLH, right? And we wanted to create an online experience or a virtual event experience for all the people who still want to create events, right? We have got all the support on Hacktoberfest website, right? We have got a set of instructions, organization kit, and all those things, right? And this year, one of the things that we did different was we created September as Preptember. Right? I know our marketing team is very high on funds, so Preptember was basically we wanted to give time to project maintainers and repo owners to create a robust or a solid contribution guideline. Right? What usually happens is when Hacktoberfest starts, right, they are bombarded with a lot of PRs, a lot of contributions, a lot of contributors reach out to them, that they want to contribute to the project, right? And if you don't have a defined contribution guidelines, right, it becomes a bit hectic to manage all of that, right? So we gave a 1-month period to everybody, right, so that they can get their repos in shape. If you have any issues that you would like to get handled during the month of October, you can properly create them, tag them, right? You can create the contribution guide and all those things, update your README, right, so that people get easy access to your repository, right? And the last thing, we created a robust event kit and we updated our resources as well, right? Because your first point of contact for Hacktoberfest is your Hacktoberfest website, right? It has all the resources you need, right? You don't need to listen to me, you don't need to listen to anybody, you don't need to talk to anybody. Whatever you want to do with Hacktoberfest, all the information is there on the website, right? So, and also we had to change the whole event kit, because the virtual events and the physical events thing, right? Now, and this is the most important part of this presentation, right? If you want to take away one thing, take away this slide and try to understand. I mean, I'm not sure if any one of you has actually previously contributed to Hacktoberfest, right? Has completed the challenge. And till last year, rules were pretty simple, right? You register on the website and then you make 4 pull requests to any of the public GitHub repositories, right? And I guess as the previous speaker mentioned, it had this downfall, right? When you start giving things for free, we can't have nice things, right? I mean, the world is like that, right? So there were not some, actually a lot of backlash that we saw in the starting 2 days of the Hacktoberfest, right? And we had to actually went and revamp the whole thing, right? And that's where these rules came into the picture. I'm not sure if all of you have seen it. Some of you might have seen it, but these rules came out, I guess, yesterday morning. Right? So I will just like you to understand and go through them so that you can have a fruitful Hacktoberfest, so to say. So one of the biggest change that we are doing this year is Hacktoberfest is now opt-in. Right? So till earlier you could have gone ahead and contributed to any GitHub repository and your PR would have been counted. But this year we have changed that. Right? This year the repositories would have to opt in to actually be counted for Hacktoberfest, right? And the way they can opt in is via adding a topic to that GitHub repo, right? So whenever you open a GitHub repo, you can just go to the right side of the page. There is an about section, and about section would have some tags, right? So I just pasted an example. That's a CSI driver for DigitalOcean block storage, and it has a topic called Hacktoberfest, right? So whenever you're contributing a PR, just make sure you are contributing it to a repo that has the Hacktoberfest topic. Otherwise, it won't be counted. Second thing, the PR should be in one of these 3 states. It should either be merged, right? And if it merges, it's well and good, right? That automatically validates that your PR is a good change. But we understand that sometimes some projects might take a longer time to merge a PR, more than a month, right? Projects like Linux or Kubernetes, right, where there is a month-long discussion just to understand what the PR is doing, and there are a lot of iteration, a lot of changes, right? So in that case, that PR either could be approved by a maintainer, right, or it should have an Hacktoberfest accepted label, right? Because you would iterate on PR a lot, you might try different approaches and all those things, and if it doesn't get merged, you can ask the maintainer to add a Hacktoberfest accepted label, right? And as soon as you have that label, that PR would be counted towards the challenge, right? We have increased the review period, right? Earlier the review period was 6 days. We have now 7 days. Right? Now we have made it 14 days, and this basically gives maintainers more time to understand the PR, to understand your changes, to interact with you, right? And if they have to mark it, invalid, or if they want to mark it merged or accepted, or whatever they choose to do, right? And the deadline to do all of this, right, your completions, merging, your labeling, and your approving, all of the deadline is November 1, right? So you have till November 1 to get those tags in. Right now, understand that these are 2 different dates, right? Your PR should have been raised by 31st October. Right? The Hacktoberfest period starts from 1st October to 31st October. But it might be a possibility that you are raising a PR at 11:30 p.m. on October 31st, right? So it's not going to get merged in half an hour, right? So, but by the next day, when you are talking with the maintainer, you can ask them to just add a Hacktoberfest accepted label, and you can keep working on it. So these are the new rules for this year. If you have raised 4 PRs before 3rd of October or before yesterday's morning, your PRs would still be counted, right? So you don't have to worry about it. We are still going to honor that. But if you have not done that, just keep in mind whenever you are sending a PR, these rules would apply, right? Moving on, right, and the biggest motivation, like why do we do Hacktoberfest? And that's for the t-shirt. So this year we are going with the dark and light theme, right? So you have two options to choose from. You can either choose the navy blue one and or the white one, like depending on which spectrum you fall onto. And you also have and this year we are also going environment friendly, right? We want to offset our carbon footprint, right? We send out t-shirts all across the globe, right? And there is an environmental cost to that, right? So if you don't want to add to that cost, you can choose an option of planting a tree. Like we have partnered with a NGO called Tree Nation, like, and if you choose that option, we will donate to that NGO on your behalf, and they will basically put a plant in, right? And you're saying, right, Hacktoberfest is growing, right? Not just in terms of sign-ups and completions and pull requests, right? Also in terms of community. Like, we till last year we only used to have one name partner, that was Dev, right? But starting this year, we have two name partners, that Intel and Dev. Right, Intel is a big name in open source; they contribute a lot of code. Uh, Dev is a platform for developers, right, where you can learn a lot of things. And also we have got some name sponsorship from OneEdge, JetBrains, Circle CI, and GitHub, of course. Right, GitHub has been our long-term partner. Right, we have been partnering with GitHub, I guess, since 2015. Right after the first edition, GitHub came on board as a partner, and they have been with us since then. And then we have got also a lot of community partners like Indeed, MetalMost, MLH as well. Right. Now, why are we doing Hacktoberfest, right? Why do we keep doing this year after year, right? What exactly it's going to do, right? Now, one of the things that we have seen, when you put people together, when you allow people to collaborate with each other, they create awesome stuff, right? And there are a lot of amazing projects that have come out of Hacktoberfest or have gotten, better by using or by hosting Hacktoberfest events and PRs and all those things. Like, it provides a good learning opportunity for a lot of beginners or for a lot of new timers or the first timers, right? People who have never sent a PR, right? They basically get to learn how an open source project works, how Git and GitHub works, right? And from maintenance point of view, they get to welcome new community members, right? Running an open source project is a hectic task, right? And most of these maintainers, they are not getting paid to run these open source projects, right? They're getting paid to do some other stuff, but they are just doing it as a side hustle, right? And they always need help, right? They always want somebody who can contribute to the project, who can help them with their project, right? And Hacktoberfest provides a platform where a new contributor can connect with the maintainer, can help with the project, right? And maintainer also gets the extra hand that they are going to require to get their project going, right? It also helps in growing real-world experiences. I mean, you can keep creating, closed source software in a team of 20 people, but you wouldn't know the exposure that can get you when you are deploying a code or developing a code for, let's say, thousands of users across the globe, right? That opens it up for more scrutiny, and it makes you a better developer, right? Hacktoberfest helps to introduce people to free and open source software, right? For all the newbies, for all the people who are sending their first PR, we have got a lot of resources coming in. And contribution is not just about the code, right? We count we count a PR as a PR, right? It doesn't matter if the PR has the code part in it or not, right? Because from the way we see it is, a contribution to open source is not just about code, right? You can change documentations, you can add test cases, you can create examples, right? You can host events like these, right? You can write blogs, tutorials. It could be anything, right? And everything is an open source contribution, right? Everyone is part of that community. And we have had a lot of testimonials where people have actually got jobs due to Hacktoberfest, right? You start contributing to a project, right? And let's say if a company that owns that project, or if a company that is using that project, internally, right? And they are looking for an expert who's good at that project, right? They do hire them, right? And that's like a standard practice of all across the globe, right? Hacktoberfest actually helps you to get kick started with that. And of course, you get to rise through the contributor ladders. Like there are a lot of first timers who become regular contributors, and there are a lot of regular contributors who eventually become maintainers. Right? And what's in it for Dio, right? Why is DigitalOcean does that, right? And DigitalOcean as a company is something that is built on values, right? And one of our core value is our community is bigger than just us, right? Uh, our whole tech stack is based on open source, right? Starting from all our offerings, all our products, be it virtual servers, be our load balancer, be it our databases, our managed Kubernetes, everything is based on open source servers, open source services, right? And we understand that if we want to survive as a company, right, the only way is via sustainable open source growth, right? The more open source grows, uh, the more we the more we benefit from it, right? And that's one of the reasons why we want to contribute back to the community, right? Hacktoberfest is one way to do that. We do lot of we do contribute a lot of code back to these open source projects, right? We do a lot of sponsorships to events or to the open source project itself, right? We provide a marketplace where we host a lot of open source projects that our customers can use, right? Now, since I'm talking about DigitalOcean, I would just like to give you an overview of the company as well. I hope a lot of you have heard about it, right? If not, I will just give you a rundown. DigitalOcean is a cloud infrastructure and software services company, right? So we basically give you infrastructure where you can run your code, where you can run your applications, your workloads, or anything like that, right? And the thing that differentiates us from other cloud providers is our simplicity, right? If you are going to use, and I'm not going to take anybody's name, but if you want to use some of the famous cloud providers, there is a big learning curve, right? You need to be an expert to just use them, right? And we want to remove that barrier, right? With DigitalOcean, you can just get started very easily, and you can create the account and you can get your servers up, all in like 5 to 10 minutes, kind of a thing, right? So that's what differentiates us from other cloud providers, right? We as a company started in 2012 in New York City, and we have got 12 data centers in 8 regions to serve developers all across the globe, be it in Canada, US, Europe, or Asia. We have got more than 500,000 active customers in 75 plus countries, right? And we are not a big company, more than 500 plus employees, right, all over the globe. And we have raised more than $500 million in both equity and debt combined, right? And one of the things that we specifically feel proud on, right, is our community tutorials, right? And this is one of the way that I actually got to know about DigitalOcean, right? No matter what level of tech you are working on, right, there is a high chance that you would find a relevant DigitalOcean tutorial, right? There are a lot of people who have heard about DigitalOcean just because of those tutorials, right? And these tutorials or these articles or these blogs, they are not specific to DigitalOcean, right? They are about any open source community, right? And that's also one of our ways to give back to the community, right? We actually encourage everybody internally to write those tutorials, and we also support external authors. Now, right, when people hear about Hacktoberfest, right, one of the things that comes is it really for me, or why should I do that, right? So, no matter what level you are, be you are a beginner, right, you're just starting with it, or are you a contributor, right? If you are a beginner, you can get a lot of getting started guides. If you are a contributor, you can up your game, start contributing more, and probably become a maintainer. Or if you are a maintainer already, you can just get more help for your project, right? So there is something for everybody in Hacktoberfest. I also want to talk a bit about my Hacktoberfest journey. Like, I started in Hacktoberfest, taking part in Hacktoberfest challenge 2 years back. I've got 2 T-shirts to prove that. My first year was sent on 1st October 2018. Right, I'm not sure if you can see it on the screen. Right, and so that is the PR I sent. I was working on Golang, and I wanted to contribute to a cloud native project. Right, I came across a project called OpenEBS. Right. I talked to those guys, and they said that okay. They said yeah. I asked them, okay, do you need help with something? And they said yeah, of course. And I actually talked to them in September, but they asked me to hold the PR till October because the Hacktoberfest was starting, and that's how I got to know about Hacktoberfest, right? So it was not a big change, right? I just added a unit test for a method, right? But that's how I got started, right? And I have been contributing to that project for past 2 years now. And recently, I was made a maintainer of that project, right? So that's how the journey has been, right? It took me almost 2 years or almost 3 years. It's going to be the third year. No, actually 2 years, right? Yeah, 2 years, right? So, but that's what the consistency has brought in, right? Because I chose a project where I wanted to work, right? It was not some random stuff that I tried, right? And it eventually gave me results. Now that brings me to talk about Hacktoberfest values, right? And this is important thing, right? At DigitalOcean, we take values very seriously, be it company values or be it any event values that we are doing, right? And one of the first thing is everybody is welcome, right? When you are taking a part in a program that's happening on a global level, right? You will interact with people, a lot of different background with different skill set, with different seniority, right? The only condition is be kind to them, right? I was yesterday. I was in an event and I was talking to a person, and he's from a finance background, right? He has been working in finance for 3.5 years, and now he has just started learning Python, and this is going to be his first Hacktoberfest, right? And uh, it's not going to be he's not going to write a lot of code, but this is going to be something that's going to help him, right? Now you might also encounter some people like that, probably to the repositories you are hosting or probably to the repositories you're contributing. Just make sure you're kind to everybody. And the second value is the most important one, right? I cannot stress this enough. It's not about the quantity, right? Sending 4 PRs is not that big a deal, right? But whenever you are sending a PR, make sure it is a meaningful change, right? Just don't send a PR, just to get a T-shirt, right, out of it, right? I know T-shirt is a good motivation, but in the end of the day, it's not going to help you, right? I mean, if you change, if you add one, if you change one letter, if you add one comma or things like that, right? It's not going to help you. It's not going to help your skills. It's not going to help in your career, and it's just going to annoy that project maintainer where you're going to send it, right? And you are eventually going to get a bad name in the community, right? And you basically don't want that, right? The whole reason uh, or the whole essence of Hacktoberfest is to create that community feeling, right? So make sure whatever changes you are sending to the project, whatever PR you are sending, has a meaningful impact to that project, right? And of course, don't be a person with a short-term goal, right? It's not. I mean, don't just send 4 PRs and disappear from the repository. It will just create a tag debt, and somebody would else have to take care of it. So make sure whatever project you are contributing to, you have a long-term plan to commit to that project, right? Talk to the maintainers, talk to the repo owners, try to understand, look at the roadmap, try to understand where that project is going, and make sure your vision or your growth aligns with that, right? And then start contributing to that project, right? Build the repo over the time, right? But just don't shoot and scoot, right? So enough of that. How do you actually get started with that? Right? How do you actually get started with Hacktoberfest? Right? The first thing, you need a GitHub account, right? And I'm sure you could have a GitHub account, right? And if you don't, you can just go to github.com. The onboarding is pretty straightforward, right? You can create an account there, and then you register that account to hacktoberfest.digitalocean.com, right? Once you have registered, get familiar with GitHub. What are PRs? What are issues? How you can raise the PR. We have a lot of beginner resources that you can use, that you can understand how all of the things in GitHub work. Right? It's not complicated. It's pretty straightforward. We just need to do it a couple of times. Right? And once you have done that, you can search for repos with Hacktoberfest topic. Right? Remember, this is one of the core part. Right? If you contribute to a project that doesn't have the Hacktoberfest topic, your PR won't be counted. Right? So it will just be a waste of time for you if you are planning for the Hacktoberfest challenge. Right? Of course, otherwise, please feel free to contribute anywhere. So I guess last I checked, we had around 10 or 12,000 repositories, right? And you can also add filters based on the language that you want to contribute to, right? You might be a Python developer or a C developer or a JavaScript developer. Based on your interest, right? You can based on your language interest, you can filter those repositories, right? And then send 4 pull requests to those repositories between 1st and 31st October, right? Keep in mind to qualify, those PRs either need to be merged, right, within 14 days, or they have to be, uh, approved by a maintainer, or they need to have an Hacktoberfest accepted label. Right, and the last deadline to do all of this is November 1. Right, just keep that in mind. And of course, I mean, we have talked about this in pretty much length, right? Don't do spam, right? It's not going to help you. It's just going to, it is going to ruin your reputation in the community, and it's just going. I mean, it will just be waste, right? Waste of your time, waste of maintainers' time, right? So when you are working with open source as a community, please respect everybody's time and their efforts, right? Only send meaningful changes, right? Don't spam. And we are working on a mechanism where if your PR gets marked as invalid or spam, you basically get negative points, and if you get too many negative points, you can be banned from Hacktoberfest, right? And not for this year, probably forever, right? And I'm sure you wouldn't want that, right? That basically serves no purpose, right? So be careful about what you are doing, right? And when I say careful, you don't have to get scared out of it, right? When I say careful, I just mean that see, open source community is full of nice people, right? These people want to help newcomers. These people want to help contributors, right? But once you start spamming them, that's when the problem starts making. Right? If you have any questions, just clarify them. Go to issues, right? See if there are any open issues, right? Go to their meetings, right? Chat with them, be in Slack or Discord or IRC, whatever they have been using, right? But make sure whatever contribution you are making is a meaningful contribution. Great. So that's all I had. Thank you for being a brilliant audience, and you can get in touch either on LinkedIn or on Twitter or on email. Or if you want to try out DigitalOcean, you can go to the link. That's po.co/Hacktoberfest 100. You will get $100 credits, and you can try out our products. You know, the servers and the databases and whatever. Basically, you can just deploy an application, and you can see how the whole public cloud stuff works, right? I think I have a couple of minutes. So if there are any questions, I can probably take them.
All right. So guys, if you have any questions, you can unmute yourself or just write them in the chats.
Sir, can you share your in August month? I have seen your Twitter and you just share a project like in a Kubernetes containerization website. So can you share some what you've done on that project?
Right. So Kubernetes is container orchestration system. Right. I have been contributing to that project for now 5-6 years now. I mean, it has become too big, right? And I just started with the small stuff when I was in 2014, and then from development, I basically moved on to the repository management. Right. Now I'm part of something known as SIG Contribex. So what we basically do is we work on increasing contributors' experience to Kubernetes. Right, Kubernetes is the second biggest project on GitHub in terms of issues. Right, so there are a lot of contributors who are coming in, and me and other people in the team, we basically take care of improving that experience. That if a new contributor is coming in, how they should feel, because we were a new contributor at one point of time, so we share our experience and help them understand those things. I have a question from Ashish, I guess. Can I contribute if I know only Python or only any language? Yeah, you can. I mean, you can just search for repositories with the topic Hacktoberfest, and then there is a filter for language as well. Right. So I guess we have thousands of repositories for Python. Right. I mean, Python is one of the most used languages. Right. There would be no dearth of opportunities there. I have one more question. Do you think the new rules might discourage first-time contributors? Right, and that's the one thing that we have discussed in length. it won't discourage the first time contributors. It might discourage some of the people, or it might reduce the number of repos that participate in. Right, earlier we had the whole GitHub open for us. Right, now maintainers would have to actively opt in to a repository. Right, from a first time contributor point of view, you would still have to earlier find an issue that you want to work on, right, and talk to the contributors, talk to the project owners and maintainers, and then submit your PRs, right. That flow still remains the same, right. The only thing is, in an earlier method or in an earlier system, there was a way to game the system, right, where you can just go and start sending PRs, and you will still get a t-shirt, right. So these new rules basically discourage that, right. What we are doing right now, the first time contributors are supposed to do that by default, right. It's just it's almost a tragedy that we have to enforce it, right. But yeah, I mean, it is what it is, right. So I don't think it's going to have an active impact on contributors who are actually serious about open source, right. But if you are there just to spam PRs or just to get the t-shirt, of course this is going to be a bit difficult, because now you have to actually make sure that you are contributing to the correct repository.
So there is any tip for those who didn't do the development until now, but like they have to contribute to open source? So any tips for them?
Yeah, right. I mean, if you have never contributed to open source, I would say start doing it now. I mean, it's a good thing, right? It's a wonderful thing. And the way I see it, when I started contributing to OpenEBS, I was not getting paid to do that, right? The only reason I did that was, my day job was different, right? The only reason I did was because I wanted to, get that real world experience of how an open source project is developed, right? How the communities work, right? And I always wanted to become a maintainer. I don't know why. That was like one of the things that I wanted to put in my CV, that okay, I am a maintainer of an open source project, right? And the only way to do that is when you start, right? And when I started contributing, of course, there was a bit of hesitation that, what if my code is not good enough? What if they just discard it? Or, anything could happen. But fortunately, as I said, open source guys are always good guys, right? They helped me, right? They helped me correct the mistakes that I had been making, right? And basically my coding style also improved, right? And again, I eventually I did become a maintainer, right? So the only thing is, you have to make sure that why are you doing that, right? Why do you actually want to contribute to the project, right? And always make sure that whenever you are contributing to a project, you have a long-term plan to do that, right? Don't just start sending PRs and get away from them.
And so last one is that, like, how to read a big repo. I'm just I'm thinking on contributing on big repo like OpenCV, TensorFlow, Jenkins type of repo. So like how I understand the issue and how I go the workflow that a big repo is had.
Right, and that is going to be. That's a constant problem, right? With big repos, you have to spend some time to understand the flow, right? There is literally no way out of that, right? You would have, and that's why we have September, right? Where you can actually create the contribution guidelines, right? Let's say if I talk about Kubernetes, right? What I advise to new people is, you first understand what Kubernetes is, get your concepts clear, install it on your own, right? Don't use any managed service that install it for you, right? Install it by hand, component by component, right? And that helps you understand what each component is doing. Like after that, you can start understanding, what other things you can do with that. Right? So the first point to start is read the concepts behind that project, go through the contribution guide, do it by yourself, and then you would be able to understand how you can. I have one more question. Would any design related repository count if it is labeled Hacktoberfest? Yeah, any repository. We have no restrictions on that. We don't see what that repository do. The only thing we are worried about is it should have the topic Hacktoberfest. That's all. Right, guys, I'm sorry, I would have to leave. I have another event starting in 2 minutes. Right.
Thank you so much, sir.
Right. If you have any questions, just reach out to on the mail or on Twitter or on LinkedIn. Right. Not a problem. And it was great being here. Right. Happy hacking, happy Hacktoberfest, and I'll see you guys probably.
Thank you, sir.
Bye bye.
Bye. Right. तो लगभग जितनी भी चीज़ें हैक्टोबरफेस्ट के बारे में तुम्हें जाननी चाहिए सर ने बता दिया. अगेन अगर ओपन सोर्स तुम पहले कभी कंसिडर किए हो कंट्रीब्यूट करने का